Hi everybody, Wrangler back again with another Amiga video. Hope you're all keeping safe and well. It's been a few weeks since my last video and it's time to start thinking about trying to finish off this AA3000 Plus that I've been working on for a while now. I mean, the machine where we left it last time was perfectly usable, but there were a few things that it would be nice just to get a little bit more complete. Including, for example, the power switch, trying to get that to work properly. So even though we've got a new power supply in there, actually turning it on and off was a bit cumbersome. And equally, this A3000 case that we're looking at here didn't come with the LED panel. I guess that must have got broken in times past. So really, it would be nice to have those LEDs back. So there are a couple of things at least to work on. So I think no more talking, I need to get on with it, take the case off and start poking around the inside and making some plans. So I just happen to have the case open at the moment while I'm fiddling about with some new ROMs, because I thought I would take this opportunity actually to move to OS 3.4 ROMs. So I've been sorting all that out, getting that working. And because the case is open and taken apart, I thought it'd be a good opportunity just to answer one of the questions I got on one of the earlier videos, which is what processor card am I using? And you can see that down here. It's an A3660 revision 1.1, originally designed by John Hertel. And there it is that you can see fitted to the motherboard. So also in this kind of gloss black PCB design, which means it matches really well with the motherboard itself. It looks like they were made to go together. On the A3660 here we've got the 68060 processor. This is a revision 5, which seems perfectly adequate for these purposes rather than the more expensive and harder to find Rev 6s. And a special low profile heatsink here so that the mounting plate for the A3000 and the disk drives that go, floppy disk drives that go up here, so the processor, even with the heatsink on, can fit underneath that mounting plate, because there really isn't a lot of clearance in the A3000. This does get sort of a little bit warm to the touch, I guess maybe 40 degrees or something like that. And maybe I will have to think about cooling for the whole system once I really get it up and running. But generally speaking, seems to operate absolutely fine. So this is a solution that does work well in the A3000. The one thing that's lacking, of course, from the A3660, or one of the things, is any onboard local RAM. So speeds do suffer because of that. And equally, to help out with that, on the far side over here, you could probably just about see I've got a ZORAM in one of the Zorro slots, just to provide sufficient memory for running some of the more demanding programs. So there we are, that's what it looks like inside the case, but there's lots more to do, so I better get back to work. One other quick thing to show you before I close up the case completely, and that is another little design feature which I think is really thoughtful on the AA3000 Plus motherboard, and that is a couple of fan headers. Now up here you can see some trailing wires. I'll show you what they're connected to in a minute, but they lead to one of the two fan headers on the board. This one's a 12-volt fan header, the other one, which is down the other end at the front of the case, is a 5-volt one, so you've got both options available, but this one, as I say, 12-volt, and is connecting to a fan I've added to the rather inadequate heatsink on my Voodoo 3 card here. Voodoo 3s run very, very hot. I think actually in a former life this one's been overclocked, so that made matters even worse, so I've added a fan, 12-volt fan. That fan header is extremely convenient for powering my fan on my Voodoo without having to run off a Molex connector. I suppose I could do that, but this, given it's there, wow, what a great design feature. So pleased to have that there. And maybe, in fact, thinking about it, I might use the 5-volt fan at the other end of the case just to blow some cold air around the case, keep the whole thing cool. But great design feature, Hesse. Thank you so much for including that. Okay, so let me show you where I got to with the LED panel. You can see here, here's my homemade DIY substitute instead. This is just a little bit of Vero board, which has the copper strips on the other side just to allow you to solder components together. And all I've done is to have some flying leads as connectors onto the PCB at the back, and then wired up a few of these LEDs. So these are 5mm by 2mm rectangular LEDs. This is a red one which I didn't use. I've used the green and yellow ones just to match what the A3000 actually looks like. So this is what I used. You cannot get exactly the same LEDs as in the original A3000, which were, if you like, double LEDs. In fact, what I did was to use two side by side. So two 5mm LEDs makes a 10mm one in effect. Stack these side by side, obviously two of the same colour, and put them on the PCB here. And just with some careful soldering, getting the lengths right, and the distances exactly where these have to be to line up with the case, which you can't quite see there. Let's try that again. To line up with the case holes right at the top here. These do actually come right in these two holes, and therefore work as intended. So I'll show you that a bit later. We'll power it on. But LED panel, at least for now, fixed. Ultimately, it would be good to get an original and replace this kind of hatchet job that I've come up with a real one. But for now, that works fine. Okay, so now's the time to talk about power. You might remember back in a previous video I added a resistor on the 3-volt line of this new power supply because we don't use 3 volts for the Amiga motherboard, and I needed to do that to load up the power supply properly. It needs a certain minimum load on it to function correctly, so I put a resistor across the 3-volt power there. That was fine. It did though start to get warm after I'd been using it for a while, so one thing I did was just to add on this piece of bent aluminium strip that I happen to have spare, just to create a little heatsink for that resistor, and that seems to work really pretty well. So that keeps that resistor nice and cool. So that's done. The other thing I have been talking about is doing something similar across the 12-volt power line, having another dummy load there just in case I, for example, took the hard disk out of here, which would normally act as a sort of proper load. I did try that for a while with a 25-watt 10-ohm resistor, which would provide the right kind of load. The thing is, it got really hot. I mean, so hot that it was uncomfortable to just touch the thing. So, you know, options there. One was perhaps to attach that rigidly to the case, the metal part of the case, so to use the whole case as part of the heatsink in effect. But I was a bit concerned just generally about heat build-up inside the case here, because A3000 is a bit notorious for overheating. I've already got an A60 in here. I'm running a Voodoo graphics card. They get hot. Other things are producing heat in here. The hard disk, for example, heat is already going to be a problem here. So adding to that with a dummy load that actually I don't really need if I don't make any changes to this, just seemed a bit unnecessary. So anyway, long story short, I scrapped the resistor on the 12-volt line. So that's why these cables are sealed off. Don't need them anymore. But I'm keeping the one on 3 volts because that has no load even under normal operation. So that's that part of the power. The other part is getting the switch to work, because I wanted to try and attach it up to the original switch here, and that meant a lot of measuring to ensure that wherever I mount the switch, it's going to correspond to the top of this pusher rod here. So measuring to the back of the case, measuring how far away from the edge I am, measuring height, all 3 dimensions as accurately as I could, and then start to put together a bracket to hold the switch in exactly the right position. So to help me kind of visualize what that would look like, I did my usual thing of prototyping, not with paper this time, but with some thick card, so that this could actually be a short-term substitute just to try out whether the switch is actually held in the right place. So this started out as a rectangle of cardboard, and you can see I gradually cut bits off and adjusted it, little extra flaps on here as I made adjustments, and also bends to get this to be exactly the right shape. So through a process of trial and error, you end up with a piece of card, and then it was a question of actually trying that in the chassis, attaching the switch to it, and getting it to play the role of a temporary substitute for the bracket that I was ultimately trying to create. And then, of course, once that looks more or less right, it's a question of getting to the workbench and starting to work on some real metal. Again, this was back to the aluminium sheet that I had originally, and cutting that to the right sizes, cutting the cutouts correctly, drilling it out, and then bending it. So bending it, it was the usual procedure of attaching an iron bar to one part just to give that some rigidity, and then bending the rest of the metal to create a nice straight seam. So that took a number of bends to get it right. This was by far the most complex piece I had to put together. And by the way, if it's looking like the bit of aluminium that I'm working on is a bit blue, that's just a plastic coating that was on the sheet when I got it. That comes off later on, and eventually we get to the finished bracket. So that's the construction of the bracket, and then what does it look like when you put it in place? Well, here we are. Let me move that just a little bit closer. You can see the bracket here holding my switch, and I've attached a sort of front button, you might call it, on the front of the switch, just to allow for a little bit of error margin. If that push rod doesn't quite hit the right place, it'll still be enough to activate the switch. You see it's here, it's nice and solid, and as a matter of fact, you could probably see it needs to be mounted behind the front of the power supply. This modern power supply is slightly longer than the original, so the bracket actually has to hold the switch behind. So there we have it. That's all fitted up in the case quite nicely. The crucial question is, does it actually work? So let me show you. I need to put all this back together and screw it down so that we've got something to push against, but let me show you where we get to. I'll put the case back on, and I've plugged in a power lead. So we've got power going, mains power now going to the power supply. So I think all that remains to be done is to hit the power switch here and just prove that everything's working. So here we go, wish me luck. And on it comes, power is on. Hard disk did something there. It's just whirring up, I can hear, doing its sort of startup thing. And there we go. So I think you can see the LEDs are doing what they should be doing. Power switch is working nicely. So this Amiga is pretty much now at completion. So really happy about that. Really happy that I managed to find a home for my AA3000 Plus motherboard, and this is sort of pretty much fully operational. So that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching it, and join me again in the next video. Thanks for watching.